California 4 years ago, ministry convention, I speak. While I speak, my telephone starts, bzzzt. It was on vibrate, bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt. The phone keeps vibrating. And I don't know how to turn it off. Would you believe that? And I look and I turn the volume down and it still vibrates. And I don't know how to turn it off. So I open the telephone, take the battery out, throw the telephone on the chair, leave me alone so I can preach my sermon. And I continue to preach. By the time I finish my sermon, I put the battery back, 16 text messages and 22 voice messages from one guy, member of my church. So I called him back. I said, what's the problem? Why don't you answer the phone? I was preaching. Oh, I didn't know. Duh. Sure, if I was preaching, how could I tell you I am preaching? You know. So he said, I said, what's the problem? And he says, well, you know, my wife had a surgery 2 years ago. And she never healed. 2 years ago, she had a surgery. And basically, she lived in constant pain. And it would not heal. And doctors didn't know the problem. And they kept analyzing and doing tests. And they still could not figure it out. And she lost her job and hospital bills. And he says, you know, she had surgery. You know, she lives in pain. You know, she lost her job. Then next, you know what happened? They lost their grandson. 2 months old baby died. Had some problem with his intestines, and they didn't manage to save the baby. And I did the funeral. It's terrible. He says, you know that I lost our grandson. He says, I just lost my job yesterday. He says, I'm just going crazy. I don't know why God doesn't help me. I've been praying for 2 years for my wife. I've been praying several months for my grandson. I've been praying for my job. I have been praying, asking God again and again. And he doesn't answer. Now listen carefully. I want to repeat. What did he say? I have been praying, asking God again and again. Is that the way you should pray? When you ask God again and again, what do you focus on? Problems? You are supposed to focus on Jesus. I said, you focus on problems instead of focusing on God. I want you to do something for me. And I want you to tell me what happens after you do this. He says, what should I do? I said, I want you tonight, when you go to prayer, not to ask for help for your wife or for you or for health or for job. He says, I need to. I am desperate. I said, hey, haven't you done that for the last 2 years? Yes. And no answer. Then don't do it tonight. I want you tonight, before prayer, to write down 10 things that God has done for you in your past. 10 miracles, 10 answered prayers. And write down 10 Bible promises. Go to Psalm, go to Isaiah. Write 10 Bible promises. When you go to prayer, I want you to tell God the 10 things. God, I remember when my son was sick. I remember when I lost my passport. I remember when my car broke. And this is what you did for me. Okay. Okay. You tell God those 10 miracles, answered prayers, and you tell God those 10 promises out loud. And after you do that, I want you to call a friend that has a hard life and tell a friend those 10 miracles and those 10 promises. That's it. He said, I asked God to remind me, and as I was praying, I remembered one, and then second, and he said, I wrote them down, and then I found 10 promises, and then I prayed, and I started to tell God one by one. And he says, when I got to third or fourth one, I started to feel peace. This is first time in 2 years when I have peace in my heart.
Amen.
And then he said, as I was repeating more to God and promises to God, I started to realize how I dishonored God in front of the whole universe by not having faith and not trusting Him. He died Jesus. He gave Jesus for me, and I did not trust. I doubted Him. And he said, I started to have peace and joy, and I don't know how God will work, but I knew that I can trust Him that He will work. Building faith. And then he said, for some reason, I did not feel the need to ask. I knew that He knows, and I knew that He will work. I had so much faith that I started to sing. And he said, I didn't sing since I was a child. Can you believe that? He says, I started to sing. And he said, I called a co-worker who lost his wife to cancer and his son, 18 years old, in a car accident. And he also lost his job yesterday. So I called him and I told him the 10 stories from my life and the 10 Bible promises. And the guy said, Nathan, I told his name. He said, Nathan, you don't know what you have done. He said, yeah, I called you to tell you, to give you some courage. He said, no. I had my gun loaded here, ready to pull, to kill myself. And the phone started to ring. It was you. And he said, while you're talking, I started to cry. And I started to sense that I can trust that God will take care of me and solve these problems.
Amen.
Saved his life, saved another life. And the guy says to Nathan, and Nathan said, this is what he said to me. You have been through a lot. How could you have so much faith? What a religion. What a God you have. I want to know more about your God. And Nathan said, I was ashamed of myself because I knew that I didn't trust God.